Mr. Thomas, you are the owner of the piece of land in question, are you not? Yes, I am. Is that where you live presently? That's right. Can you give us an idea how many years you have resided there? Well, more than 20 years, I know. What kind of dwelling do you have there? A farmhouse. When was that farmhouse built? About 10 or 12 years ago. There had been an old house on the property when I got there, and we had lived in that several years before we built the new one. You and your wife? Yes, and my children. How many children do you have? We have 4, but only one lives home with us now. Your other children are married and living away from home, I take it? Yes. Mr. Thomas, the dispute in this case involves the ownership of this parcel of land, correct? Yes, sir. How did you come to live on this piece of ground? I bought it from the previous owner. Who was that? Mr. James Mitchell. When was that? I don't know the exact date. Can you give us an approximation? Well, it had to be over 20 years ago, as I said. Somewhere in the early 50s? Probably. What was your first involvement with this ground at that time? I helped Mr. Mitchell farm it. How many acres are we talking about? 18 acres altogether. Are all those acres devoted to the business of farming? No. Some of the land is wooded, about 7 or 8 acres, I would say. Do you know whether any timbering operations were ever carried out there? Oh, yes, we had a lumber company come in and cut down one stand of pine some years ago. About when was that, do you recall? That was around 1960, I would say. What was your purpose in cutting those trees down? Well, it was good quality timber, and it brought a good price, and I needed some money at the time for my farming business. In short, it was a business proposition where you were able to turn a profit and put the proceeds to your own uses? That's correct. For how long had you owned the land at that time? 10 years or so. Had anyone ever disputed your right to use the land as you pleased? Never. I had bought the ground from Mitchell and got the deed and everything. Was that deed ever recorded? Not to my knowledge, no, sir. Where is that deed now? All I have is my copy. And that is not a signed copy, is it? No, it is not. What were the circumstances under which you came into possession of the deed? I had worked for James Mitchell for 2 or 3 years on his farm, and we had talked a number of times about him selling all of it or part of it to me. Finally, we agreed on a price, and I bought the farm from him. Was there actually an instrument signed, a deed transferring ownership of the land to you from Mitchell? Yes, sir. He and I both signed the document. Were there any witnesses present at the time? No. Did you have a lawyer representing you in this transaction? No, I did not. And I assume Mr. Mitchell had no attorney there either, did he? No, he didn't. We just agreed on the price, what he wanted for it, and he signed the deed over to me. It was his land to sell if he wanted to. Did the consideration for the land include anything other than the ground itself? What do you mean? There was at that time a house on the property, although you later built a new farmhouse. Is that right? There was an old stone farmhouse, not very big, with a wooden porch on the front, but it wasn't in very good condition. Mr. Mitchell had lived there by himself for quite a while, and the place had deteriorated over the years. He was a widower at the time you entered into the transaction to buy his property, wasn't he? Yes, he was, and the place wasn't kept up well at all. Was there any equipment included in this arrangement, a tractor or other farm machinery? There was a tractor, but it wasn't used much because Whoever Mr. Mitchell hired to farm his land usually brought their own equipment. Is Mr. Mitchell alive today? No, he has been dead some years. After you acquired the farm, did you continue his practice of hiring men and equipment to till the land? Neighboring farmers, yes, we would work out an arrangement, you know. Have you patronized the business establishments in that area of Kent County all these years? Yes, I have. Is it your belief that the businessmen with whom you dealt recognize you as the rightful owner of the land where you have been living for some 20 years? I believe so. Nobody ever questioned my title to the property. I have lived on it, farmed it, raised my family on it, and never once thought it wasn't properly mine. When the problem arose that gave rise to this suit, what did you do, sir? I couldn't understand what the problem was. Then I discovered the deed had never been recorded, and I could not locate the original anywhere, so I decided I'd better get a lawyer. Was there an effort made on your behalf to trace the chain of title? I don't know. I suppose that is what they did. My lawyer took care of the details. Do you know whether Mr. Mitchell had ever had any children? I think he did, but I am not sure because I never met any of his children. Are you engaged in any business other than farming and related activities, such as the timber cutting operations you testified to earlier? No, sir, but one year we did have a small circus with a big top and all set up in one of my fields, and I was paid for that. But you have had no income from any business enterprise except farming, basically, is that right? Yes, sir, I have been a farmer all my life. That has been your sole livelihood? Right.
That was tough. How fast was that?
It was, $158.